crime, conspiracies, cults, serial killers, and murder. These are the things I love to deep dive into, and I know you do too, you beautiful, twisted intellectual freak. Today we're talking about the disappearance of Steven Stayner, which is truly one of the most unbelievable true stories I've ever come across. Usually when we talk about true crime, the story ends with someone missing forever or found dead. But this one has a shocking twist you won't see coming. It's a story of profound tragedy, incredible heroism, and a family that seemed to be haunted by fate itself. Let's get right into it. Stephen Gregory Stayner was born on April 18, 1965, in Merced, California. He was the middle child of 5 kids, with 3 sisters and an older brother named Carrie. By all accounts, they were a regular, happy family living a quiet life. That is, until December 4, 1972. That afternoon, a 7-year-old Stephen was walking home from school, just like any other day. A man named Irvin Edward Murphy approached him, holding a pamphlet. Murphy claimed he was collecting donations for a local church and asked if Stephen's parents might be interested. Being a helpful little kid, Stephen said his mom would likely donate and innocently told the man where he lived. Just moments later, a white Buick pulled up to the curb. Stephen, thinking this was all part of the church donation effort, climbed into the car. And just like that, he was gone. Never made it home. The driver of that car was Kenneth Parnell, a lifelong predator and criminal with a history of abuse. Irvin Murphy was his accomplice. They drove Stephen to a remote, rundown cabin in Caddy's Valley, which in a chilling twist of fate was frighteningly close to where Stephen's own grandfather lived. On that very first night, Parnell began abusing the little boy. And over the next 7 years, a horrifying process of brainwashing began. Parnell systematically erased Stephen's identity, told him that his parents didn't want him anymore, that they had given him away. He even claimed he now had legal custody of the boy. He renamed him Dennis, enrolled him in different schools under that fake name, and constantly moved from town to town to stay hidden in plain sight. Stephen spent the next 7 years living this bizarre, fractured double life. He was a captive, yet somehow he was allowed a shocking amount of freedom. He was told he was unwanted, yet he was made to function in society, going to school and interacting with people who had no idea who he really was. You might think he could have escaped, but for a young child who's been told his family abandoned him, the world is a terrifying place. He didn't know how or where to turn for help. Parnell moved him all across California, working odd jobs and often leaving him unsupervised for long periods. At one point, a woman named Barbara Matthias lived with them. Stephen later said that Parnell had instructed her to help lure another child, but thankfully that attempt failed. As Stephen grew and hit puberty, Parnell's twisted interest in him began to wane. He wanted younger victims now. In the most sickening development, he started using Stephen to help him abduct them. This brings us to February 1980. A 5-year-old boy named Timmy White was kidnapped. And this became Stephen's turning point. For the first time, he wasn't just the victim. He was now a witness, watching another little boy suffer the exact same nightmare he had endured for 7 years. He saw his own stolen childhood reflected in Timmy's terrified eyes, and something inside him snapped. He knew he couldn't let this happen again. On March 1, 1980, while Parnell was away at his job, Stephen made a decision that would change everything. He grabbed little Timmy, walked out the door, and hitchhiked to the police station in Ukiah, California. He walked in with a 5-year-old boy in tow, and when the officers questioned him, said the line that would become famous across the country: "I know my first name is Stephen." That single, brave moment ended his 7 years in captivity. On March 2, 1980, Stephen was finally reunited with his family. The reunion was emotional, broadcast on national news. Parnell was arrested, tried, and sentenced to just 7 years in prison, though he only served 5 before being paroled. It's an outrageously light sentence that we just wouldn't see today. Overnight, Stephen became a national hero. He was the boy who not only survived his own abduction, but saved another child from the same monster. The media couldn't get enough of him. His story was turned into a book and a TV miniseries called I Know My Name is Stephen. But even as cameras followed him and the world celebrated his courage, his return home wasn't the fairy tale ending everyone hoped for. The reality was much more complicated. He struggled immensely to adjust. His parents, who had grieved for their 7-year-old boy for so long, treated him like he was still that little kid they lost, not the teenager who had returned. His classmates at school bullied him relentlessly, taunting him about the abuse he had suffered. The world knew his most intimate trauma, and he had no privacy. He dropped out of high school, began drinking heavily, and his relationship with his father became particularly strained. The trauma was deep, and the pressure of being a public hero was immense, but he still tried to rebuild. He married his girlfriend Debbie when he was just 20, and they had 2 children, Ashley and Stephen Jr. He also worked with organizations to help other abducted children, trying to use his horrific experience to do some good in the world. And then, just when it seemed like he might find some peace, tragedy struck again. On September 16, 1989, at just 24 years old, Stephen Stayner was killed in a hit-and-run motorcycle accident on his way home from work. His life, already scarred by the unimaginable, was cut short. But the story doesn't end there, because this story has one final, dark, and devastating chapter. While Stephen became a reluctant hero, his older brother Carrie had been living in his shadow. Carrie was 11 when Stephen was kidnapped. He carried the heavy burden of guilt, believing he should have protected his little brother. He felt neglected by his parents, whose attention was consumed first by Stephen's absence and then by his return. That guilt, neglect, and isolation festered for decades. Years later, Carrie Stayner would become a murderer himself. The infamous Yosemite Killer, responsible for the brutal murders of 4 women in 1999. But that's a whole other dark and complicated story for another video. Stephen Stayner's life was an incredible swirl of horror, courage, and tragedy. A child who was stolen, a boy who became a hero by saving another, and a young man whose life ended far too soon. The greatest and most haunting irony is that the boy who rescued another from the darkness died young, while his brother, the one who was left behind, became the darkness himself. It's a story that truly shows how trauma can ripple through a family, affecting everyone in different and sometimes deadly ways. If you found this case as haunting and unbelievable as I did, please give this video a like and comment below to let me know which true crime story you want me to cover next. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and I will see your beautiful face in the next video.
Thanks for watching.